It's dropping. It's dropping.
What's dropping?
The
balloons?
The balloons, the report. What do we think? What should we watch for?
We should read it.
Yes.
I think it's very important for people to read it and not just rely on immediate, out-of-the-box spin from the White House, from the president's allies, and even from the president's adversaries. I don't think there's a way for people to digest what is almost certainly to be hundreds of pages, even with redactions, judge what the conclusions are without reading it somewhat carefully. I'm planning to shutter myself in a room and read it for some hours before I go out and make any proclamations about it. Some of the important things we want to learn, that I think is important to understand, is whether Bob Mueller intended for the decision, if any, to be made about obstruction, even though he decided not to make that decision, if he meant it to be left to Congress, or if he meant it to be left to Bill Barr, which I highly doubt.
The fact that he explicitly said that his report does not exonerate.
Mueller said that, yes.
Mueller said that. So, I mean, on the one hand, surprising, but not really surprising, that Sarah Sanders and others have said exactly the opposite.
Yeah, well, they're saying the opposite because Bill Barr said the opposite. So, yeah, I mean, semantically, they have some footing because they don't necessarily say that the...
Barr has said that he's prepared to exonerate.
Yeah, so they just say the thing has exonerated the president. Bob Mueller says very explicitly, this does not exonerate the president. Bill Barr stepped into the vacuum and said, based on my understanding of the law and the facts and everything else, I'm saying it does exonerate the president. It allows a talking head who's in support of the president and
to then say, look, exonerated.
Exonerated. Yeah. And people are not,
they're not parsing.
They're not parsing so much.
Now, part of that, I guess, is that Barr, as many jurists, have come out and said that we don't believe that a sitting president can be indicted. So in that regard, I mean,
but Barr was very explicit to say, because he understands the politics of it and the optics of it.
It's not because of that.
Yeah, he said, we don't believe the president, there's a finding the president committed a crime, and we're not basing it on this concept, this interpretation from the Office of Legal Counsel that the president can't be indicted.
We're basing it on what we read in the report.
Correct, and their understanding, their interpretation of the law.
So do you feel like you've actually learned anything from what we have seen so far?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to learn more from the report.
But what have we learned so far? What have you learned so far?
We've learned that the President of the United States appears to have engaged in a lot of conduct that's questionable, some conduct that could constitute an abuse of power. The narrow question that I used to consider in my time as a United States attorney, as a line prosecutor, of whether or not you make the binary choice in favor of stating a criminal case and going to a grand jury and indicting someone because you believe at the end of the day you will have proof beyond a reasonable doubt that you can prove to a unanimous jury versus not having that. It's very binary. You don't necessarily learn something if all that is done in secret and you have no information, you don't get the report. Maybe that means that the person was utterly innocent and there was no proof or evidence at all, not one iota of evidence. Or it could mean, on the spectrum, that it was basically almost there, but the tie goes to the runner and you don't charge. Or it could mean it was all there, but for some legal technicality, you can't bring the case, either because with respect to the president, the Office of Legal Counsel says that you can't indict a sitting president, or in another case you might imagine, you investigate somebody, but then you realize that the applicable law has a statute of limitations of 2 years, and now it's 2 years and 3 months. You have overwhelming evidence of guilt, you have overwhelming proof that you could bring, but for a legal reason you can't bring the case. That does not mean that the prosecutors and others who were privy to the information didn't learn something important about the president.
Doing Justice is the book.
Thanks, Ian.
And the human being. Well done.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.